Chosen one, why does your chest feel heavy right now? Why did you wake up this Sunday morning with that unexplainable weight pressing down on your spirit? And why, tell me, why did something pull you away from everything else you were doing to land here in this exact moment? Stop. Just stop everything. Heaven is interrupting your Sunday. I don't care if you're sitting in your kitchen with cold coffee. I don't care if you're lying in bed, wondering if it's even worth getting up anymore. I don't care if you just got home from a church service that left you feeling more empty than full. You need to hear what I'm about to say, because your life, your actual life, depends on it. You didn't find this message. This message hunted you down. Listen to me carefully, beloved. Something was sent toward you this week. Something dark, something destructive, something that was supposed to reach you by now, but it didn't. And do you know why? Because God himself stepped between you and that attack. He blocked it with his own hand. And this Sunday morning, he's telling you why. Sunday isn't just another day on your calendar. It's a threshold. It's the day heaven uses to reset what hell tried to destroy, redirect what the enemy tried to derail, and reveal what you've been too tired to see. I know you're exhausted. I know you've buried people you thought would bury you. I know you've survived heart attacks, cancer scares, divorces that gutted you, children who stopped calling, bank accounts that betrayed you, and nights so dark you begged God to just take you home. You've lived 70, 80, 90 years, carrying weight that would have crushed people half your age. But you're still here. And that's not an accident. Before we go one step further, if your spirit is stirring right now, if something inside you just recognize this moment as sacred, I need you to write Amen in the comments. Not for me, for heaven. Let the angels see you're still listening. Let God know you're still here. Because here's what's about to shatter everything you thought you knew. God didn't just save you from that attack this week. He paused your entire timeline. He stopped the clock. He interrupted the sequence of events that was supposed to unfold. Not to warn you, beloved. Before I go deeper, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. What I'm about to reveal will explain why your prayers felt like they hit a ceiling, why your breakthrough keeps getting delayed, why you felt like you're living in slow motion while everyone else speeds past you. God paused you on purpose, and what he's about to release will make every single second of waiting worth it. Why have your prayers felt like they're bouncing off the ceiling lately? Why does every step forward feel like you're walking through wet cement? And why, tell me, why does it seem like God put your entire life on pause while everyone else kept moving? Because he did. Listen to me, beloved. What you've been calling delay, God has been calling protection. What you've been naming abandonment, heaven has been calling alignment. And what you've mistaken for silence has actually been the most intimate inspection of your life that's ever occurred. You've felt it in your bones, haven't you? That exhaustion that 8 hours of sleep can't touch. That heaviness that settles over you the moment you open your eyes. Some of you woke up this Sunday morning and couldn't even explain why your chest felt tight, why your spirit felt weighted down, why getting out of bed required more strength than you thought you had left. That's not depression, dear one. That's divine gravity. That's the weight of heaven leaning into your timeline, holding you in place while God repositions everything around you. Think about this. You've been carrying questions you're too tired to ask out loud. Questions like, did I miss my moment? Have I been forgotten? Is this all there is? You whisper them in the dark when no one's listening. You wonder if maybe your season has passed, if maybe God's moved on to younger vessels, if maybe you've simply run out of time. But what if I told you that every question you've been afraid to ask has already been answered in heaven's courtroom? What if God has been listening to your silence louder than he's ever listened to your words? The Bible tells us in Exodus 14:14, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." But that stillness isn't passive, chosen one. It's powerful. It's strategic. It's God saying, "Stop moving so I can move everything else." You see, time is like a curtain. For most of your life, you've been living on one side of it, the side where you see only what's in front of you, where you measure your days in doctor's appointments and grandchildren's birthdays and pills you take at breakfast. But Sunday is the day God pulls that curtain back. Sunday is when He lets you peek behind the veil and see what's been happening in the realm you can't touch with your hands. And what's been happening there will take your breath away. There is a reason God didn't let you move forward last week. A reason He kept that door closed. A reason He blocked that phone call, delayed that opportunity, redirected that conversation. In just a moment, I'm going to reveal it to you. But first, I need you to understand something that will change how you see every closed door in your past. God's stops are not punishments, they're preparations. Think about the children of Israel at the Red Sea. Exodus 14:10 says, "As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were trapped. Ocean in front, enemy behind, mountains on both sides. Every logical path forward was blocked." And what did God tell Moses? "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." Stand still. Not run, not fight, not figure it out. Stand still. Because God was about to do something so magnificent, so impossible, so supernatural, that if they had moved 1 inch in any direction, they would have missed the greatest miracle of their generation. You've been standing at your Red Sea, haven't you? You've been looking at the impossibility in front of you. The medical bills that don't make sense, the family relationships that feel beyond repair, the loneliness that aches in your chest at 2 a.m., the financial pressure that keeps you awake counting pennies. And you've been wondering why God won't just part the waters already, why He keeps you standing here, why He won't let you move. Because, beloved, if you moved right now, you'd step directly into the path of what He's been protecting you from. Chosen one, if you've ever felt God stop you right before something major happened, if you've ever been held back when you wanted to rush forward, type, "I've felt that" in the comments right now. Because we're about to walk through this revelation together, and I need to know you're still with me. Here's what nobody told you about divine halting. God sometimes stops all movement because your breakthrough is too close to risk, even one step of misalignment. He freezes your timeline not because He's forgotten you, but because He's about to remember you in ways that will leave the world speechless. Job 14:5 says, "A person's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed." Limits, boundaries, divine stops. God has been setting boundaries around your life that you couldn't see, blocking paths that looked promising but led to destruction, closing doors that seemed perfect but would have crushed your destiny. And all this time, while you thought He was absent, He was actually conducting the most thorough inspection of your life He's ever done. God's silence wasn't absence, beloved. It was examination. He's been walking through every room of your heart, every corner of your calling, every hidden place in your spirit, making sure that when He finally says go, nothing, and I mean nothing, will be able to stop what He's about to release. You've been in the waiting room, but the doctor is about to call your name. But here's what you need to understand before we go any further. What God is about to release into your life requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And that's exactly what this stopping, this pausing, this divine interruption has been creating. So let me ask you something that's going to determine everything that happens next. Are you ready to discover what God has been building in you while you've been standing still? You want to know what really happened this week while you were struggling? While you were lying awake at 3 a.m., wondering if anyone even notices you anymore? While you were sitting in that empty house, staring at walls that used to echo with laughter? Heaven discussed your name, not in passing, not as a footnote in some cosmic agenda. Your name came up in the courts of light, beloved. And I need you to understand what that means, because it will shatter every lie you've believed about being forgotten. Picture this with me. The throne room of the Almighty. Revelation 4:3 tells us there's a rainbow around the throne, resembling an emerald. Light that doesn't just illuminate, it reveals. And in that sacred space, angels who've watched over you for 70, 80, 90 years stood at attention. These aren't fairy tale creatures with harps. These are warriors who've blocked arrows aimed at your heart, redirected accidents that should have killed you, and carried your desperate prayers straight to the Father's ears. And this week, God reviewed your file. Stay with me now. This is where it gets personal. He didn't review your successes. He didn't pull up your church attendance record or count how many Bible verses you memorized. No, beloved. He reviewed your faithfulness in the seasons nobody saw. He pulled up footage of moments you thought were forgotten. That night in 1987, when you gave your last $20 to someone who needed it more, even though your own cupboard was bare. That afternoon in 2003, when you sat with a dying stranger in the hospital because they had no one else. That decade you spent praying for children who grew up and never called to say thank you. God saw it all. He recorded every single moment. But here's what breaks my heart. You've been walking around thinking those moments didn't matter, thinking your sacrifices were wasted, thinking your prayers bounced off the ceiling and fell back down like rain on concrete. You've been believing the lie that because people forgot you, God forgot you too. Listen to me very carefully. Hebrews 6:10 declares, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. Not unjust. He will not forget. Some of you gave to others when no one gave back to you. You poured out when your own cup was empty. You prayed for families that forgot your sacrifices the moment they got what they needed. You stood in the gap for people who never even knew you were bleeding. And you know what God said about that in the heavenly courts this week? He said, look at this one. Look at what they've carried in silence. Look at how they kept going when quitting would have made perfect sense. Angels who've witnessed wars and kingdoms rise and fall stood in awe of you, because heaven understands something the world doesn't. Endurance in a lonely season is the rarest commodity in the universe. Anyone can worship when the blessing flows. Anyone can praise when life makes sense. But to keep loving when love isn't returned, to keep giving when you're running on empty, to keep believing when every sign says give up, that's the mark of the chosen. But I'm about to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. In that heavenly discussion, there was one thing God saw in you that changed everything. One quality, one characteristic, one moment of decision that shifted how heaven views your next season. I'll reveal it soon, but first you need to understand why it matters. Your loneliness wasn't random. Your isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. God has been training you in a classroom nobody else could graduate from. While others were building platforms, you were building character. While they were collecting followers, you were developing faithfulness. While they were screaming for attention, you were learning to hear the whisper of the Almighty in the silence. And now, right now, God is saying your training is complete. Chosen ones, I need you to do something. Wherever you are in your bedroom, your kitchen, your car, I need you to whisper this aloud. Lord, I am listening. Don't just think it, say it. Because something shifts in the spiritual realm when you speak those words. Heaven leans in. Angels take position. God himself turns his face toward you. Say it now. Lord, I am listening. Did you feel that? That's not your imagination. That's the atmosphere changing around your life. Because God noticed something about you that even you didn't fully understand. He saw your endurance. Not the kind the world celebrates with medals and trophies. The quiet kind. The kind that gets up every morning when getting up feels impossible. The kind that chooses hope when hope seems stupid. The kind that whispers, I trust you, when trust has been shattered 1,000 times. Psalm 34:18 says, The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. You've lived that verse. You've embodied it. And heaven has taken notice. But here's the question that's going to determine everything about what happens next in your life. If God saw all of that, if angels stood in awe of your faithfulness, if your name came up in the courts of heaven this week with honor and recognition, then why tell me, why are you still living like you're forgotten? Why are you still accepting crumbs when God is preparing a feast? Why are you still believing you're finished when heaven is saying you're just getting started? Something is about to break open in your life. But first, you need to understand exactly what God is about to release and why this Sunday was chosen as your turning point. You felt it, didn't you? That moment this week when everything suddenly got harder, when the phone call came that you weren't expecting, when you opened that letter and your hands started shaking, when you looked at your bank statement and felt that familiar knot tighten in your stomach, when you reached for your medication and wondered how much longer your body can keep fighting. Dear one, I need you to listen to what I'm about to say, because it's going to change how you see everything that happened to you in the last 7 days. That wasn't just a bad week, that was an attack, a calculated, strategic, spiritual assault designed to break something inside you that's been holding strong for decades. Let me get specific, because I know exactly what some of you faced. The doctor's appointment that didn't go the way you prayed it would. The call from your daughter that never came, even though she promised. The social security check that somehow has to stretch further than it ever has before, while groceries cost more than they did last month. The Sunday morning when you sat in that church pew feeling more alone than you've ever felt in your entire life, surrounded by people but completely invisible. And then there's the thing nobody talks about. That 3 a.m. moment when you wake up and wonder if anyone would really notice if you just didn't wake up tomorrow. When you look at the grandchildren growing up on screens, living in a world you don't recognize anymore, and you think to yourself, did I matter? Did any of it matter? I see you. God sees you. And what I'm about to tell you will shatter the lie that's been whispering in your ear all week long. Psalm 92:14 says this, and I need you to hear every word. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, not dried up, not forgotten, not finished. The Bible doesn't say you were fresh and green. It says you are, present tense, right now, at 70, at 80, at 90 years old. But the enemy knows this verse too, and that's exactly why he hit you so hard this week. You see, beloved, hell doesn't waste ammunition on dead targets. The devil doesn't send his best weapons after people who don't pose a threat. The intensity of the attack you experienced wasn't because you're weak. It was because you're dangerous. You carry something in your spirit that terrifies the kingdom of darkness, and this week he tried to convince you to put it down before you ever pick it up. Think about Job for a moment. The Bible says he was blameless and upright, a man who feared God and shunned evil. And what happened? Everything was stripped away, his wealth, his children, his health. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends showed up to accuse him instead of comfort him. And Job sat in the ashes wondering what he'd done to deserve such suffering. But here's what Job didn't know in that moment. Here's what you don't know about your week. God had already seen the end from the beginning. Job 23:10 records his breakthrough revelation. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. When he has tested me, not if, when. The testing wasn't punishment, it was refinement. You are like a tree that bends in the storm, and while you were bending, while you were crying out, while you were wondering if you could survive one more gust of wind, something miraculous was happening underground. Your roots were growing deeper, stronger, more anchored than they've ever been in your entire life. That financial pressure that's squeezing you right now, it's teaching you a level of dependence on God that prosperity never could. That loneliness that aches in your chest, it's creating a prayer life so intimate with the Father that angels are taking notes. That body that's betraying you, it's forcing you to discover that your strength doesn't come from your flesh, it comes from the Spirit of the living God dwelling inside you. But here's what's going to shock you. What attacked you this week wasn't random. Heaven has revealed the source to me, and you need to hear this. It wasn't just the enemy trying to destroy you. There was something else happening simultaneously. God was redirecting you away from a disguised trap. You prayed for that door to open, didn't you? You begged God to change that situation. You cried out for relief, for breakthrough, for the miracle you've been waiting for. And when it didn't come, when the door stayed shut, when the situation got worse instead of better, you thought God had abandoned you. But what if I told you that on the other side of that door was a slow poison dressed up as a blessing? What if that relationship you wanted restored would have drained the last years of your life? What if that financial opportunity you almost got would have put you in bondage you'd never escape? What if God closed that door, not because He doesn't love you, but because He loves you too much to let you walk into destruction? Proverbs 16:9 declares, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Your plans aren't bad, they're just incomplete. You see, today, God sees 50 years from now. You see your comfort. God sees your calling. This week, something tried to break you, but God redirected the blow. You thought you were being rejected. You were being protected. You thought you were being punished. You were being positioned. If this message feels uncomfortably personal, if these words are landing in places you've never spoken out loud, I need you to write, "This is me," in the comments below. You need to know you're not alone. You need to see that there are thousands of others just like you who've walked through this same fire and are still standing. Because what's about to happen next will prove that every closed door, every delayed answer, every moment of suffering was leading you to something so specific, so appointed, so divinely orchestrated, that when it finally manifests, you'll fall to your knees and thank God for every single tear you cried getting here. But first, you need to understand why Sunday matters, why this particular day carries weight that the other 6 don't, why God chose this morning to interrupt everything and speak directly to your spirit. Beloved, let me tell you something that's going to shake the foundations of everything you've accepted as your reality. There's a principle operating in heaven right now that most believers never discover. It's called the Sunday reversal principle. And what it means is this: on Sundays, God rewrites the ending of what the enemy began. You heard me right. Every plot, every scheme, every attack that hell launched against you Monday through Saturday, God takes one look at it on Sunday morning and says, "No, that's not how this story ends. Let me show you what reversal looks like." Think about this. When did Jesus rise from the dead? Sunday morning. When did the Holy Spirit fall on the church in Acts chapter 2? Sunday. When did God rest after creating everything? The 7th day, the original Sunday. This day carries resurrection power in its very DNA. But here's what's tearing at my heart right now. Some of you have been living like Friday is your final chapter. You've accepted the crucifixion as the end of your story. You've made peace with the tomb. You've convinced yourself that the pain you're in is where you'll die. But God is saying, Sunday is coming. Sunday is here. And I specialize in turning graves into gardens. Look at your life right now. Really look at it. That marriage that almost destroyed you, but somehow you're still standing, that's evidence. That heart attack the doctors said you wouldn't survive, but here you are 5 years later, that's evidence. That financial collapse that should have left you homeless, but you've still got a roof over your head, that's evidence. Evidence of what? Evidence that you're not just lucky. Evidence that you're not just tough. Evidence that you carry something heaven refuses to let hell destroy. Every single thing you survived wasn't survival. It was spiritual promotion disguised as suffering. You think you barely made it through? No, beloved, you were being prepared for elevation. Let me speak directly to your heart right now. You are not late. Write that down. Say it out loud. You are not late. Every door that closed, every opportunity that passed, every chance you thought you missed that wasn't rejection, that was redirection. You are not overlooked. God sees you right now. He's been watching you this entire time. While you thought you were invisible, He was positioning you. While you believed you were forgotten, he was perfecting his plan. You are not forgotten. Your name is engraved on the palms of his hands, according to Isaiah 49:16. Every tear you've cried is in his bottle. Every prayer you've whispered is in his archive. Every moment you thought he wasn't listening, he was recording your faithfulness. Picture this with me for just a moment. You're standing in front of a locked door. You've been standing there for years, decades maybe. You've tried every key you could find. You've knocked until your knuckles bled. You've pushed, pulled, begged, pleaded. Nothing. That door stayed locked, mocking your efforts, laughing at your prayers. But this Sunday, something shifted in the spiritual realm. Heaven touched the handle, and what was locked against you is about to swing wide open in your favor. Not because you finally figured out the right prayer, not because you finally became good enough, but because Sunday carries reversal authority. Here's what I need you to understand with absolute clarity. There is one blessing attached to this Sunday, yes, this Sunday, December 15th, 2024, that heaven has held back until this very moment. Not last Sunday, not next Sunday, this Sunday. Why? Because you weren't ready for it before. The blessing was too big, the breakthrough was too massive, the elevation was too extreme. If God had released it earlier, it would have destroyed you. But something shifted this week. Something changed in your spirit. And now, right now, heaven is saying, they can handle it now, release it. Do you feel that stirring in your chest? That's not anxiety, beloved. That's anticipation. That's your spirit, recognizing what your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Something is being released over your life in this very moment that was withheld for your protection. Think about Joseph. 13 years in slavery and prison. 13 years of wondering if God's promises were lies. But Genesis 41:14 says, "Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon." One Sunday, everything reversed. Prison to palace in 24 hours, not gradually, suddenly. Think about Job. Everything stripped away. Sitting in ashes, scraping his sores, wishing he'd never been born. But Job 42:10 declares, "And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." Sunday reversal. Double portion, restoration. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. 12 years of suffering. Every doctor failed her. Every treatment bankrupted her. But Mark 5:29 says, "Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction." One touch, one Sunday moment. 12 years reversed in 12 seconds. That's the God you serve. That's the Father who's looking at your situation right now. Chosen one, if you feel your spirit waking up, if something inside you that's been asleep for years is suddenly stirring, I need you to type, "I'm ready," in the comments below. Don't type it casually. Type it with faith. Type it as a declaration. Type it as your agreement with what heaven is releasing right now. Because here's what's about to happen next. What you thought was your ending is about to become your beginning. And the reversal that starts today will ripple through every area of your life in ways you can't even imagine yet. But you have to ask yourself one crucial question. If God is really reversing everything right now, what am I going to do differently? You know what breaks my heart? It's the silence. Not the silence around you, the silence inside you, that hollow space where God's voice used to echo. You remember it, don't you? There was a time when you could hear him clearly, when his presence was so real you could almost touch it. But somewhere along the way, between the funerals and the diagnoses, between the betrayals and the bills you couldn't pay, his voice became distant. And you've been wondering if he stopped speaking or if you stopped hearing. Listen to me, chosen one. God hasn't been silent. You've been deafened by the noise of survival. For decades, you've been living in what I call the gray zone, that space between promises and fulfillment, between faith and sight, between knowing God exists and feeling like he remembers you exist. You've been praying the same prayers until your knees wore grooves in the floor. You've been believing for the same breakthrough until belief itself became exhausting. And in that exhaustion, his voice got buried under the weight of waiting. But something shifted this Sunday morning. Did you feel it? That subtle change in the spiritual atmosphere, like a wind that wasn't there a moment ago, suddenly brushing against your face. In 1 Kings chapter 19, the prophet Elijah stood at the mouth of a cave, broken and ready to die. He'd just won the greatest victory of his ministry, calling down fire from heaven, defeating 450 false prophets. But one woman's threat sent him running into the wilderness, hiding, begging God to take his life. And the Bible says, God told him to stand at the entrance of that cave because he was about to pass by. Then came the wind, violent, fierce, tearing the mountains apart. But God wasn't in the wind. Then came an earthquake that shook the foundations of the earth. But God wasn't in the earthquake. Then came fire, consuming everything in its path. But God wasn't in the fire either. And after the fire, a still, small voice. That's how God is returning to you today, beloved. Not in the thunder you've been waiting for, not in the dramatic moment you thought would announce his presence, but in the whisper, the gentle stirring, the quiet knowing that something has changed. Because here's what you need to understand: when God whispers, it's not because he's weak, it's because he wants you close. You can't hear a whisper from across the room. You have to lean in. You have to draw near. You have to silence everything else competing for your attention. God is not whispering to test you. He is whispering to draw you closer. Think about a lighthouse standing on a rocky shore in the middle of a storm, ships lost in the fog, waves crashing 40 feet high, captains who've lost all sense of direction. That lighthouse doesn't scream. It doesn't chase the ships. It simply stands there, sending out one steady beam of light through the darkness. And that light is enough. The ship sees it. The captain adjusts course. The vessel finds its way home. You've been that ship, haven't you? Lost in the fog of grief, tossed by waves of disappointment, your compass spinning wildly because nothing makes sense anymore. You've been crying out for God to show up in the earthquake, to appear in the fire, to prove himself in the storm. But he's been the lighthouse all along, standing steady, sending out his light, waiting for you to look up and see him. And today, this Sunday, the fog is lifting. Here's what God is saying to you right now, and I need you to receive this in the deepest part of your spirit. Stop everything. I am about to reveal the next chapter of your destiny, not someday, not when you're more prepared, not after you've fixed everything that's broken. Now, today, this moment. You see, the enemy has convinced you that God's delays mean God's denials, that his silence means his absence, that your age means your assignment has expired. But what if the opposite is true? What if every year you've been waiting has been adding authority to your anointing? What if every tear you've cried has been filling the bowls in heaven that are about to be poured out as answers? What if this Sunday morning is the hinge point, the moment when everything before it becomes preparation and everything after it becomes manifestation? Romans 8 verse 28 doesn't say some things work together for good. It says all things. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every season you felt abandoned, all of it has been weaving together toward this moment when God breaks his silence and speaks the word that changes everything. But you have to be listening. You have to be willing to hear what he's about to say, even if it sounds nothing like what you expected, even if it challenges everything you thought you knew about your remaining years, even if it calls you out of the cave you've been hiding in and asks you to stand at the entrance one more time. Before we enter this next revelation, I need you to do something. Someone you love, a family member, a friend, someone you haven't spoken to in years, they're wandering in darkness right now. They're lost in the fog, and this message might be the lighthouse beam they need to find their way home. Share this. Don't overthink it. Just send it. Because what God is about to reveal isn't just for you. It's for every ship he's calling back to shore. The voice has returned, the whisper is clear, and what he's about to say will explain why you had to walk through everything you walked through to get here. Now listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you isn't a suggestion. This is a direct command from the throne room of heaven, delivered specifically for this Sunday, specifically for you. God needs you to do 3 things. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Right now, in this sacred moment that's been carved out of eternity just for you. First, be still. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still, and know that I am God." The Hebrew word for be still is rapha. It means to let go, to surrender, to stop fighting, to cease your striving. God is commanding you to put down the burden you've been carrying for 70, 80, 90 years. That weight in your chest, that anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m., that fear about your children, your health, your bank account, put it down. Right now, this Sunday morning, God is saying, I've got this. You don't have to carry it anymore. You've been white-knuckling your way through life, haven't you? Trying to control outcomes you were never meant to control. Trying to fix people you were never meant to fix. Trying to secure a future that's already secured in my hands. But your hands are tired now. Your grip is weakening. And that's exactly where God needs you. Because only empty hands can receive what He's about to give you. Second, release the old burden. Isaiah 43:18, 1:9 thunders across the centuries. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? But you're still carrying that divorce from 1987, aren't you? You're still replaying that betrayal from your business partner in 1995. You're still hearing the words your mother said to you when you were 12 years old. Dear one, that old burden has become your identity. You've carried it so long, you don't even remember what it feels like to walk without it. You've wrapped your entire sense of self around that pain, that rejection, that failure. And now God is saying, I need you to let it go. Not because it didn't hurt, not because it wasn't real, but because I'm about to give you something so heavy with glory that you need both hands free to carry it. What are you holding on to that's keeping you from holding on to God's promise? What past are you clinging to that's preventing you from grasping your future? This Sunday isn't just another day, it's your divine release date. The prison door is open, but you have to choose to walk out. And I know what you're thinking, but I've tried to let it go. I've prayed about it, I've forgiven, I've moved on. Have you? Because if you had truly released it, it wouldn't still be the first thing you think about when you're alone. It wouldn't still be the wound you press on when you want to feel something. It wouldn't still be the story you tell yourself about why you can't have more, be more, do more. God is asking you this Sunday, will you finally trade your old burden for my new assignment? Third, prepare for the new assignment. Romans 12:2 commands, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not reformed, not revised, transformed, metamorphosed, completely reconstructed from the inside out. Because, beloved, what God is about to release into your life doesn't fit into your old mindset. It doesn't match your current capacity. It doesn't align with your present understanding of what's possible for someone your age. You think God brought you this far just to let you fade quietly into the background. You think He kept you alive through heart attacks and cancer and loss, just so you could spend your final years watching game shows and waiting to die. Absolutely not. Your life is not winding down. Your purpose is opening up. The assignments God has been preparing you for through decades of testing require everything you've learned, every scar you've earned, every tear you've cried. Moses was 80 when he parted the Red Sea. Abraham was 100 when he held Isaac. Anna was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. But here's what breaks my heart. You're sitting there right now thinking, this sounds beautiful, but it's too late for me. I'm too old. I'm too tired. I've missed my window. And that lie, that poisonous, demonic lie, is the only thing standing between you and the greatest chapter of your entire existence. There is one more instruction, the most important one of all, because what God is about to reveal will explain why He paused your timeline this Sunday. He's not just preparing you for a blessing, he's repositioning you for a legacy-level breakthrough that will outlive you. This isn't just about your life anymore. This is about your children's children. This is about the generations that will rise up and call you blessed because of what you say yes to right now. Are you ready to hear what God is repositioning you for? Now listen to me very carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will explain every strange thing you felt this past week, every moment that didn't make sense, every shift in your spirit that left you confused. When God interrupts your life, He doesn't just redirect you, He confirms you. He leaves signs, not the kind you can touch or see with your natural eyes, but signs so profound, so undeniable, that your spirit knows something sacred is happening. And if you've experienced even one of these 3 signs in the last 7 days, everything I'm telling you isn't theory. It's your reality right now. The first sign: time feels different. Have you noticed it? Time hasn't been moving the way it should. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. You sit in your chair for what seems like an entire afternoon, but when you look at the clock, only 20 minutes have passed. Or the opposite happens: you close your eyes for a second, and suddenly 3 hours are gone. This isn't dementia, this isn't age. This is God bending time around you. Listen to what happened to Joshua. The sun stood still. Joshua 10:13 says, "The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day." Why? Because God was fighting a battle that required more than 24 hours could hold. So, He paused the clock. When God is repositioning you, He suspends natural time. He stretches moments when you need to receive something. He accelerates hours when you need to get past something. You've been living in a time warp this week, and you thought you were losing your mind. But you're not losing anything. You're being recalibrated. I'm talking to the grandmother who sat in her kitchen yesterday and felt like time stopped. The grandfather who looked at the calendar and couldn't believe it's already December. You're not imagining this. Your spirit is sensing what your mind can't yet comprehend. God is moving you out of chronological time into prophetic time. And when you enter prophetic time, beloved, the rules change. What should take years can happen in days. What felt impossible yesterday becomes inevitable today. The second sign: old battles lose their power. Here's the second confirmation, and this one's going to shock you. That addiction that's haunted you for 40 years, that temptation that used to grip your throat and squeeze until you couldn't breathe, that anger that would rise up like bile every time you thought about what they did to you, suddenly it feels small, not gone, not erased, but diminished, like someone turned down the volume on a screaming voice. You wake up one morning and realize you haven't thought about it in 3 days. You sit through an entire afternoon without that familiar gnawing in your chest, and you wonder, what's happening to me? Spiritual elevation, that's what's happening. When God lifts you to a higher altitude, the battles that raged at ground level can't reach you anymore. 2 Corinthians 10:4 tells us, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. God isn't just helping you fight the old battles, He's moving you above them. Think about an airplane taking off from LaGuardia. When it's on the runway, every bump shakes the whole plane. Every pothole rattles your bones. But once that plane reaches 30,000 feet, the rough ground doesn't matter anymore. You're above it. That's you right now. The thing that used to shake your entire life suddenly feels distant. Not because you got stronger, because you got higher. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't permanent unless you recognize it. The enemy wants you to think this is just a good week, just a random moment of peace. But it's not random, it's strategic. God is showing you what life looks like when you operate from a higher dimension of faith. The third sign: someone unexpected withdraws. Now this one's going to hurt before it heals, so stay with me. You've noticed someone pulling away, haven't you? Maybe it's your daughter who used to call every Sunday but hasn't called in 3 weeks. Maybe it's that friend you've known for 30 years who suddenly seems too busy. Maybe it's even your own child, your grandchild, someone you thought would never drift away. And it's tearing you apart. You lie awake, wondering what you did wrong. You replay every conversation, searching for the moment you offended them. You feel that familiar ache of abandonment settling into your chest like an old wound reopening. But what if I told you that God orchestrated their withdrawal? Not because he's cruel, because he's clearing space. Exodus 33-14 records God's promise to Moses. My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. But look at what happened before that promise. God had to remove the crowd. He had to strip away the voices that were drowning out his voice. He had to create silence so Moses could hear clearly. When God is about to speak something new over your life, he removes the voices that would drown it out. When he's preparing to give you something sacred, he clears the room of people who wouldn't understand it. When he's positioning you for breakthrough, he quietly removes those who would talk you out of it. This doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they're wrong season people. And God loves you too much to let wrong season people contaminate your right now season. I know it hurts. I know you feel forgotten, abandoned, cast aside. You've already buried so many people you loved. And now the ones still breathing are walking away too. But chosen one, what if their absence isn't your punishment? What if it's your preparation? Because there's one sign we haven't talked about yet. One sign so powerful that when you recognize it, it changes everything about how you see this coming week. And you need to hear it before Sunday ends. You felt it this morning, didn't you? That sudden surge of anxiety that came out of nowhere, that pain in your chest that the doctors can't explain, that argument with your daughter that erupted over absolutely nothing, that bank statement that appeared in your mailbox showing charges you don't remember making. You thought it was random. You thought it was just another bad day in a string of bad days. But beloved, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. None of it was random. Every single bit of chaos that crashed into your life this past week was a coordinated spiritual assault. Because whenever God commands you to be still, hell panics. Think about what happened to the Israelites at the Red Sea. Exodus 14:13, Moses told them, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." But what happened the moment God gave that command? Pharaoh's entire army came charging after them with 600 chariots. The closer they got to their deliverance, the louder the enemy roared. That's your life right now, God whispered. Be still this Sunday, I'm about to move. And immediately, the counterattack began. Your peace was targeted. Your sleep was stolen. That relationship that was finally healing suddenly exploded again. Your back started hurting worse than it has in months. Your grandchildren who usually call didn't pick up the phone. Your prescription costs doubled overnight. Your car broke down. Your hot water heater died. Tell me I'm lying. Tell me this past week wasn't harder than it should have been. When a ship changes direction in the middle of the ocean, the water behind it doesn't just ripple, it crashes violently. Waves surge. The wake becomes turbulent. Everything behind the vessel goes into chaos because the ship refused to keep going in the same direction. You are that ship, chosen one. And God just turned your wheel. The enemy saw it before you did. He watched heaven's hand grip your rudder. He felt the spiritual atmosphere shift around your life. And he unleashed everything in his arsenal to keep you from making this turn. Because he knows, he knows what's waiting for you on the other side of this Sunday. This is why your clarity got cloudy this week. This is why every time you tried to pray, your mind wandered to bills, to pain, to problems that suddenly felt insurmountable. The enemy didn't attack your body, he attacked your ability to hear. He didn't come for your health, he came for your hope. He didn't target your circumstances, he targeted your confidence in God's timing. But here's what breaks my heart. Some of you are sitting there right now thinking this chaos is proof that God isn't with you. You're interpreting the warfare as abandonment. You're reading the resistance as rejection. That's exactly what the devil wants you to believe. Job 1-6 tells us that Satan presented himself before God, and the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" God himself pointed Job out, not because Job was being punished, but because Job was about to be promoted. And what happened next? Everything Job owned was destroyed in a single day. His children, his wealth, his health, everything. But here's what most people miss: the attack came because of what God was about to do, not because of what Job had done wrong. You're being attacked because you're about to be elevated. The intensity of the warfare is proportional to the magnitude of your breakthrough. Why else would the enemy waste his best weapons on someone who doesn't matter? Why would hell mobilize against someone with no destiny? The very fact that you've been under siege this week is proof, undeniable proof, that you're carrying something the kingdom of darkness cannot afford to let you receive. So let me ask you the question that's going to expose everything. What was the enemy so desperate to stop you from receiving on this Sunday? What message was he terrified you would hear? What truth was he afraid would finally penetrate your spirit? What revelation was he convinced would change everything if it reached your ears? Because I'm going to tell you right now, he sensed a divine opening. He felt the shift in the heavenlies. He saw God preparing to download something into your consciousness that would shatter every limitation you've been living under. And he threw everything he had at you to make sure you were too distracted, too discouraged, too defeated to receive it. But you're still here. You made it to this Sunday. You survived the ambush. You're still listening. And that means the enemy failed. What God has been holding back until this exact moment is about to be released. The attack you survived this week was the birth pang before the delivery. The chaos you endured was the contraction before the breakthrough. But you need to understand something crucial. What's coming next will require every ounce of faith you've built in the fire. Because God didn't pause your timeline just to bless you. He paused it to prepare you for what the blessing will demand. You felt it this morning, didn't you? That strange peace that washed over you while you were pouring your coffee. That unexplainable clarity when you looked out your window at the sunrise. That sense, and you can't quite put your finger on it, that something or someone was watching over you with intention. That wasn't your imagination, beloved. That was recognition. Your spirit recognizing what your mind has forgotten. Sunday carries a pattern in Scripture that most believers have never been taught. Look at the evidence with me. When did Jesus rise from the dead? Sunday morning. When did the Holy Spirit fall on the disciples in the upper room? The day of Pentecost, a Sunday. When did John receive the revelation on Patmos? Revelation 1:10 tells us it was the Lord's Day, Sunday. Do you see it? Resurrections happen on Sundays. Reversals happen on Sundays. Revelations happen on Sundays. This isn't coincidence, chosen one. This is divine pattern. This is celestial rhythm. And when heaven moves on a Sunday, it does not move quietly. It moves with purpose. It moves with power. It moves with precision. But here's what's going to shake you to your core. There is a door, yes, an actual spiritual door that only unlocks on a day of divine rest. It doesn't open on Mondays when you're rushing to appointments. It doesn't open on Wednesdays when you're drowning in responsibilities. It doesn't open on Fridays when you're counting down to the weekend. This door only appears on Sunday. And it only opens for those who stop long enough to see it. Think about your life for a moment. How many Sundays have you felt that inexplicable shift in the atmosphere around you? You wake up and something feels different. The air feels thicker. Time feels slower. Your spirit feels more alive than it has all week. You've noticed it, haven't you? For years, you've noticed it, but dismissed it as just being tired or just needing rest. But what if I told you that every single Sunday of your life, there's been a gate of light glowing in the spiritual realm, and you've been walking past it? What if I told you that gate has been calling your name, waiting for you to stop running long enough to step through? You're 78 years old, you're 83, you're 91, and you've spent decades thinking your spiritual life was just about going to church, singing hymns, and waiting for heaven. But God is saying today that you've been walking past the very door He's been opening for you every single week. Here's the question that should terrify and electrify you at the same time. What is behind that door? And why did God command you to stop everything, to literally halt your Sunday routine before stepping through it? I'll tell you why. Because what's behind that door isn't rest. It's not retirement from purpose. It's not a gentle fade out into your final years. Behind that door is your next spiritual assignment. And it's so significant, so powerful, so dangerous to the kingdom of darkness that God had to make sure you stopped all the noise, all the distractions, all the busy work of life before He could show it to you. He had to interrupt your Sunday because if you kept moving at the pace you've been moving, you would have walked right past the most important moment of your entire life. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Heaven doesn't interrupt ordinary people on ordinary days for ordinary reasons. God doesn't pause your timeline, block attacks against you, and position you in front of a supernatural door just to give you a nice inspirational message. He's recruiting you, right now, this Sunday, for something that requires every year you've lived, every battle you've survived, every tear you've cried, every prayer you've whispered in the dark. The door is open, the light is glowing, your name is written above the threshold. But here's what you need to know before you take another step. Once you walk through this door, everything changes. Your comfort zone dies. Your excuses evaporate. Your "I'm too old" arguments become irrelevant. Because on the other side of this door is the version of you that God has been preparing since before you were born. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to answer honestly. Are you ready to stop pretending you're just waiting to die and start living like you were chosen to deliver? Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what assignment is waiting for you on the other side. You want to know why it took so long? You want to know why you had to wait 70 years, 80 years, 90 years while watching others get their breakthrough in their 20s? You want to know why God made you endure decade after decade of unanswered prayers, closed doors, and silent heavens? Because what He's preparing you for required every single year you've lived. Listen to me, beloved. Your tears weren't wasted. Every single one was collected in heaven's bottles. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle." Not some of them, all of them. God has been keeping record while you thought He was keeping distance. Your endurance wasn't ignored. Every morning you chose to get out of bed when staying down would have been easier. Heaven took notes. Every time you went to church when your heart was shattered, angels witnessed. Every moment you whispered, "I trust you, Lord," through gritted teeth while your world crumbled, that wasn't weakness. That was warfare. That was you becoming dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. Your loneliness wasn't unseen. Those nights you sat at your kitchen table talking to God because there was no one else to talk to, those weren't empty conversations. Those were classified briefings. God was downloading something into your spirit that could only be transmitted in isolation. Moses got the 10 Commandments alone on a mountain. Elijah heard God's still small voice alone in a cave. Paul received revelation alone in Arabia. Your loneliness wasn't abandonment, it was appointment. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. The assignment couldn't come earlier because you weren't ready earlier. I know that stings. I know you're thinking, "But I was ready at 40. I was ready at 50. No, dear one. You were willing at 40. You were eager at 50. But you weren't seasoned until now. Think about wine. You can't rush aged wine. You cannot take a bottle that needs 30 years and crack it open at 5 years and expect the same richness, the same depth, the same value. The longer it's hidden in the cellar, untouched, seemingly forgotten, the more precious it becomes. You are like aged wine. The world thought God put you on a shelf, but He put you in a cellar. He was aging you, refining you, developing flavors of wisdom that only time and pressure can produce. David was anointed king at 17, but didn't touch the throne until he was 30. 13 years of running, hiding, wondering if God had made a mistake. But those cave years weren't wasted years. They were the only years that could transform a shepherd boy into a giant killer, a cave dweller into a king after God's own heart. Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac, 25 years of looking at Sarah's barren womb and still believing God's promise. But that wait did something in Abraham that instant gratification never could. It made his faith unshakable. Genesis 15:6 tells us, Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. That belief, that tested, tried, proven belief, became the foundation of nations. And you've been tested by time itself. You've been tried by disappointment. You've been proven by perseverance.